Shanti. Ganesh Chaturthi is not celebrated only to mark the birthday of Lord Ganesha, but also to mark the day when his head was cut off by his father god Shiva and replaced with the head of an elephant. Why is that incident worth celebrating as Ganesh Chaturthi? Because as we all know, Ganesh was very arrogant that he even wanted to fight with God Shiva. So, God Shiva, through his teachings, helped him to conquer his anger or to kill his anger, which is mistakenly represented in Purana as if God Shiva has killed him literally, but that didn't happen. So it is only when God Shiva is able to transform Lord Ganesh completely that Lord Ganesh becomes fully worthy of worship. Even this same incident is represented in Bible and Quran, where Adam is made out of clay after God gave his breath to him and bring him back to life. Though both the story appeared different when you hear for the first time, but the essence of both remains the same. God brings us alive back by giving his knowledge. Actually, this all the stories of all religious scriptures represent the things that happen during the end of the world, that is before the destruction of Kali Yuga. So that is when we souls are very arrogant, filled with lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego. So it is then God enters an old man's body and gives these valuable teachings. God says this world was originally created as heaven 5000 years back, and God created us as deities filled with all divine qualities. So as a gift we were given the healthy body, we were filled with wealth, and the nature is so loving to us. Even animals and birds are so loving to us that they did everything at their disposal to please us. That is why all birds have different voices yet distinct from each other. And the world was completely free of any sort of sorrow and pain, because we were deities and we were soul conscious, which means though we had a very beautiful body, we were conscious that we are not this perishable body. Instead, we are the imperishable soul that inhabits this body, that controls this body, that uses this body to fulfill its wish. So they were constantly aware. As a result, they did not give in to sensual pleasures. So they were not attracted or attached to anything worldly. Instead, they were constantly aware of the fact that they are the souls. Soul is like a tiny point that exists between the eyebrows, which is why Hindus have this habit of wearing religious symbols in between the eyebrows. So, as a result, we were not only dependent on the external worldly attractions for pleasures, but instead we derived constant pleasure from within, because the soul itself is the source of constant pleasure. Actually, That's the true nature of soul. Peacefulness and blissfulness is the true nature of soul. So we can experience constant pleasure because everything external to us, they are capable of changing and getting destroyed. So since we rely on imperishable soul for our happiness and peacefulness, it persists. But that continued only for the first 2500 years while the earth continued to be heaven. But what happened after that is this world becomes hell, mainly because we lost soul consciousness. Instead, we became fully body conscious. Thereby, we can no longer experience the eternal blissfulness and peacefulness because we lost in touch with the true self, which is soul. So we started depending on the external things for happiness. So we slowly become addicted to sensual pleasures, which actually deprives the soul of its power of purity at a very rapid rate. So as a consequence, we become more and more addicted to the worldly pleasures. Thereby the soul remains constantly intoxicated with worldly pleasures, leading the soul to lose its power more and more. As a result, soul can no longer perform any creative work. It can no longer distinguish between right and wrong. Thereby, it takes more and more wrong decisions and thereby causing more and more pain to themselves and to others. And also, they ended up creating more and more sinful actions, and as a consequence, they will end up getting more and more punishments in the form of diseases, poverty, natural calamities, and so on. So, just 100 years before the destruction of this Kali Yuga, the world, God Himself enters an old man's body and He names that old man Brahma and started giving these teachings called Murali, which is available absolutely free of cost in all Brahma Kumaris Raj Yoga meditation centers. The essence of his teachings is to consider ourselves to be the soul and to remember God as a point of light constantly. So God dwells in a golden red colored light world called the soul world or Parandam or Parlok. So this God is called Shiva by Hindus, Heavenly Godfather by Christians, and Allah by Muslims, and God is just one. The only difference between God and the rest of all other souls is God doesn't take birth like us, either in heaven or in hell. Instead, He comes only in the end just to give this knowledge, not to enjoy this world. So He takes an old man's body as a rent. So He takes that old man's body on loan to give these teachings to us. So the main aim is to make us to reach soul consciousness as we were 5000 years back. But that's not an easy task because we had been body conscious for the past 2500 years. We have become so addicted, or we have become slaves for those five vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. So we need to listen to God's knowledge, Murli, daily. And we need to keep on remembering those points, churning over those points. And also we need to remember God as a point of light as much as possible. And the main hindrance in achieving that is the attractions and attachments to this world. That is why God asks you to be dead to this world. So, by becoming dead, you no longer react to anything that's happening around you. So, nothing happens around you can arouse you sexually anymore. Nothing happens around you can kindle your anger anymore. It is as if you are dead to this world. Because if you are alive to this world, obviously the people in the world and the things and the happenings of this world will make you more and more body conscious and make you commit more and more sinful acts. So that is why God asks you to be dead to this world at a mental level. So the only relation you have in this entire world is God Shiva himself. He is the teacher, he is the father. Whatever relationship you come up with, you have it only with God. By that, we will experience the happiness out of every relationships, but we will also experience the purity in every other relationships. And that is going to help us to reach heaven, which is going to be followed by the destruction of this world. This world gets renewed into heaven every 5,000 years once, and God comes essentially before the establishment of heaven to make us eligible to enter heaven. How does he achieve that? By giving these divine teachings that only God possesses. So this is what is mentioned in that the story of Ganesha, that he was killed by God initially. Then he brings him back to life and implants him with the elephant head, which implies the complete transformation God brings within us through his knowledge. So that is exactly what we do in Ganesh Chaturthi by bringing a lifeless idol made of clay. So it is only after performing prana pratishtha that it is believed to have come back to life. So it is the same thing that is mentioned in Bible, that Adam is brought back to life by giving the divine breath of God, which actually represents the knowledge of God. So since the transformation caused by God's knowledge is so drastic that one can never believe that he is still the resident of the old world again. So it looks as if someone who resided in Satyug has come back to Kali Yuga. So that is the level of transformation we will undergo through the teachings of God, which is why in the story of Ganesh it is mentioned that they have replaced the elephant's head in the place of his original head, which means that's the kind of transformation that happened. It looks completely different now after gaining this knowledge. So the main hindrance or obstacle for this to happen is our characters before getting this knowledge, which is called sanskar, old sanskar. So we need to destroy them by constant remembrance of God and by churning only the knowledge points of God and thinking of nothing else. So that comes by constant practice. So mainly the ego comes in the way of this transformation. That is why in several parts of India it is a custom to break coconut in front of Lord Ganesh, which means they are breaking their ego and surrendering themselves completely to God to bring about this divine transformation. In Ganesh Chaturthi celebration, we perform puja daily and we decorate the idols daily, and by the final day, before performing visarjan, which basically means drowning of the clay idols into oceans, we decorate the idols so grandly that it looks like a king. And also we celebrate that function while taking the idol to ocean. There's a big procession of people singing and dancing and playing those instruments. So they celebrate it with great pomp and splendor. What is the need of that? Because they are going to just dissolve this statue in the water. What's so significant about that incident? So it is believed after the idol gets dissolved in the water, Lord Ganesh goes back to his heaven abode. The actual spiritual secret behind this is, after constantly imbibing the knowledge of God morally over a course of time, we become eligible not only to enter heaven but to claim the highest status of heaven, which is Sri Narayan and Sri Lakshmi. So we are becoming eligible for taking birth as Sri Lakshmi and Sri Narayan in heaven by the constant effort we make while we are in this old body. But it is only after we leave this body we can take the body of Lakshmi or Narayan in heaven. So by decorating Ganesh as king before performing visarjan, it means he is now fully eligible to become king soon after leaving that body, soon after dissolving the statue. So the 10-day celebration of Ganesh Chaturthi actually represents the last 100 years when God himself comes to earth and gives us these teachings and bring the enormous transformation in ourselves. So this happens every 5,000 years once, just 100 years before the destruction of this old world. So that is why we celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi every year once for just 10 days. So this is all about the true spiritual meaning hidden behind the celebration of Ganesh Chaturthi. As a matter of fact, all Hindu celebrations represent the last 100 years when we get transformed into a divine being through the teachings of God Shiva himself. Please make use of it. Go to the nearest Brahma Kumaris Rajaga meditation centers where this knowledge is available absolutely free of cost, and it is only in Brahma Kumaris center you will get this knowledge. And this knowledge called Murli is also available in websites and YouTube. I'll be giving the links of them in the description below. Make use of it, or else you can Google it yourself and find Murli in all languages, and the Murli is spelled M-U-R-L-I. Thanks for watching. Happy Ganesh Chaturthi for everybody.